The final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number S4M 05891 in the name of Aileen-McLeod on history as made at the Mull-of-Galloway. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons as soon as possible. I now call on Aileen-McLeod to open the debate. Aileen, if you are ready, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I am delighted to lead this evening's debate in celebration of the Mull-of-Galloway Community Trust's efforts to buy this iconic location on behalf of and for the benefit of the local community. And I am particularly pleased that one of the directors of the Trust, Maureen Chand, and her partner Sammy, have made the lengthy journey from the most southerly part of the Scottish mainland to be with us tonight in the public gallery to listen to the debate, as is the Deputy Leader of the Mull-of-Galloway Council, Brian Collins. And I also want to mention two other directors of the Trust, in particular Steve and Kathleen Hardy, who wanted so much to be here tonight and who have worked tirelessly, as have all the Trust members, to make the Mull a success as a visitor attraction and develop this ambitious bid for the future. And they have done so latterly while Kathleen has been undergoing treatment for cancer, which is the reason they couldn't be here tonight. So what I have to say this evening is very much dedicated to both Steve and Kathleen Hardy. Now, when I sought this debate, Presiding Officer, it was to support the Trust's efforts to secure funding for the buyout. And this morning's news that the Trust's bid to the Scottish Land Fund has been successful grants the Trust 95% of the value of the land. And as will become clear, I have every confidence the Trust will secure the remaining 5% with little difficulty. Now, this is a fantastic step forward for the project, and I cannot begin to express how pleased and delighted I am that tonight we really can say that history is being made at the Mull-of-Galloway. Presiding Officer, there is nowhere else in Scotland quite like the Mull-of-Galloway. It is a wild and romantic place in any weather, with stunning views on a good day from the mountains of Mourne in Northern Ireland to Snaefell on the Isle of Man and the fells of the Lake District. Now, I have experienced the Mull in all weathers, and it is certainly dramatic when it is blowing a hoolie and the waves are crashing against the impressive rocky cliffs. You really do feel like it's just you pitted against the elements. Now, the Mull is also a nature reserve and a site of special scientific interest, where a wide variety of birds can be spotted, as well as, if you're fortunate, dolphins, porpoises and even whales. And of course there is the iconic lighthouse designed by Robert Stevenson of Bell Rock fame, which was completed in 1828. And I know that Steve Hardy is keen to replicate Edinburgh's infamous 1 o'clock gun by bringing back into play the foghorn used as an extra warning to shipping up until 1987. Now, those are the fantastic assets, Presiding Officer, that nature and history has given the Mull. But the key ingredient which has taken it from being practically unknown to being a 4-star visitor attraction is the community itself. Because, Presiding Officer, we did not arrive at this point overnight or by accident. 12 years of hard work by the South Rins Community Development Trust took the Mull-of-Galloway from a place that you might visit if you knew about it, with next to no facilities for the visitor, and turned it into a 4-star tourist attraction, which still respects the unique wildness of its location. Presiding Officer, there are now 3 holiday cottages in the former lighthouse keepers' accommodation, a visitor centre run by the RSPB in the building which accommodated the lighthouse builders, and the lighthouse exhibition itself, which has gathered the accolades of Visit Scotland's 4-star visit attraction, and in 2010, Tourism Champion in the Mull-of-Galloway Life Awards, following the success up with finalist positions in 2011 and 2012. In addition to which, private enterprise has mirrored the success of the Trust, with the Callicray Coffee House and restaurant being built in 2004. And set into the hillside on the edge of the cliffs to minimise visual impact but maximise diners' views, and I know it very well, it complements the rest of the location well, and its design won a Green Apple Award for its construction and design. And if you are planning your summer holidays this year and wondering where to go, I am sure the Mull-of-Galloway would extend a very warm welcome to you all. Now, the Mull-of-Galloway Trust estimates that directly or indirectly, the Mull as a visitor attraction now supports 20 jobs in the local economy, which is by nature remote and fragile, so it therefore now constitutes a major part of that economy. So the decision by the Northern Lighthouse Board to sell the estate, including the associated buildings, could have been seen as a hammer blow to a successful local initiative. But the Trust and the community are more resilient than that, recognising the proposed sale as an opportunity to acquire the assets for the ongoing good of the community and the economy, which it already clearly benefits now. Now, Presiding Officer, I was privileged to officiate at the counting of ballots in Dromore Village Hall in March, and the 98% vote in favour of the buyout convinced me absolutely of the place the Mull and the enterprises associated with it has in the hearts of the community. And the new Mull-of-Galloway Trust, which is composed of many of the people who have already made the Mull a success, is nothing if not ambitious. They recognise the unique selling point of a Stevenson lighthouse in good condition and which can be accessed by the public. Many are operational and have no public access or have been sold into private ownership, but they have an excellent track record with the Lighthouse exhibition, which has attracted 10,000 visitors a year since 2009. Their vision for the Mull is one which plays to its strengths and assets. The Trust envisages new development, a safe viewing platform built over the cliffs, recreational activities for all ages, capitalising on the wildlife and landscape, and educational events and exhibitions on the history of lighthouses, marine safety and the natural environment. Renewable energy generation, such as solar panels and air source heat pumps, will end the lighthouse complex's reliance on expensive heating oil and lower its carbon footprint. It is that approach, Presiding Officer, protective of what is there, but keen to develop sustainability for the future, which the Scottish Land Funds Award has helped to secure. Above all, it is about realising the ambitions of the community. They started with natural advantages, true, but the Mull is also miles from anywhere, almost as far off the beaten track as it's possible to get. And yet the community has already created an outstanding visitor attraction, which is a major boost to the local economy. With community ownership of the assets, I believe they can achieve even more. And I also believe that the people best placed to look after such a special place are the people who live and work there. Presiding Officer, I intended this evening to invite the Minister to visit the Mull-of-Galloway. I'm immensely proud to be able to invite him to visit the Mull-of-Galloway in its new guise as a community-owned, most southerly part of Scotland. And so thank you for enabling me to bring a bit of history here tonight.
Thanks very much. And I now call the constituency member Alex Ferguson to be followed by Rob Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Not long after this session of Parliament began, I met with Peter Peacock, our former colleague here, who is the part-time Policy Director of Community Land Scotland. More recently, I met with Dr Alison Elliott and Sarah Skerrett in their joint capacity as two-thirds of the Land Reform Review Group appointed by the Scottish Government to look at the further potential of land reform. To both of these eminent organisations, I stressed the importance of any community right to buy policy not just being confined to the Highlands and Islands, as has often been thought to be the case, but to be seen to be workable and effective in the south of Scotland as well. On being asked to provide examples of suitable projects within my constituency, Presiding Officer, I needed to look no further than the most southerly point of Scotland, the Mull-of-Galloway. The Mull-of-Galloway is, as Aileen-McLeod has just eloquently pointed out, a truly magical place, and it's one that I recommend should be on everyone's bucket list of places to visit while they are still on this earth. They would not regret it for 1 second, and as I say, Aileen-McLeod spoke eloquently of why that would be the case. Anyone who has visited the most northerly and southerly points of the United Kingdom, John O'Groats and Land's End, will, I think, agree that those iconic landmarks have been pretty well ruined by the no doubt good intentions of private developers over the years. I will confess that I have visited neither, but I am reliably informed by those who have that they are invariably disappointed when they get there. That is most assuredly not the case at the Mull, and I feel pretty certain that the successful conclusion of this community buyout project will ensure that it never is. The Mull is tailor-made for a community buyout. And it's to the immense credit of the whole community, to the members of the Trust, and indeed to Steve Hardy, who first brought this to my attention, that the whole community has seized this opportunity. There have been other attempts in Galloway to persuade communities to undertake buyout projects, some good, some bad, some successful, some unsuccessful. But when a community ballot achieves a 98% vote in favour of the buyout, as was the case with the Mull, it is quite clear that no persuasion has been required. That percentage, as Aileen-McLeod again said, has been almost matched today by the Scottish Land Fund, which has agreed a grant that amounts to 95% of the total sum required. That is a wonderfully welcome decision, and I would suggest it is the right decision, and it will be welcomed by everybody concerned. If I have one concern about the Mull, it is a positive one. Aileen-McLeod also mentioned the wonderful seabird population and the wildlife that can be seen in that area, and I would particularly mention the black guillemot that predominates at the Mull-of-Galloway. And on the Rural Affairs Committee, we've been discussing the National Marine Plan and the marine protected areas that are part of that plan, and it is a complete mystery to me why the Mull-of-Galloway has not been included as part of that plan. In my own cynical way, I can only assume it's because in very close proximity there is an area that has been designated as a search area for an offshore wind farm, but that's just me. I'm sure the Minister will answer that in a different way. But, Presiding Officer, this is a great day. I really congratulate Aileen-McLeod in bringing this debate to the Chamber. I suspect it's more than coincidence that the Land Fund announced its granting of the money today, but if it is more than a coincidence, it's a very welcome one. And I would do no more than quote from the press release that I issued when the first ballot first came through, when I said community purchases in other parts of Scotland have usually led to a reinvigorated local economy alongside a real sense of pride in community ownership. And I have every expectation that the same will apply in the case of the Mull-of-Galloway. I warmly congratulate everyone involved in achieving this result. I reiterate that this evening, and I'm very proud and pleased to be able to support Aileen-McLeod's motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we now call on Rob Gibson to be followed by Claudia Beamish.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I warmly congratulate my colleague Aileen-McLeod for gaining this timely debate. And I should point out that the most northerly point on the mainland of Scotland is Dunnet Head, not John O'Groats, and indeed the most northerly point in the UK is Mull-of-Galloway. Both Dunnet Head and Mull-of-Galloway are most certainly quite exciting places to see, as I have in a previous life, in the case of Mull-of-Galloway as a Highlands and Islands member and as the member for Dunnet Head at this present time. I can assure you it's well worth a visit. At Easter recess, my partner Eleanor Scott and I had a short weekend break in the far southwest of Scotland, and after a freezing cold windy march we enjoyed some sun when we visited the lighthouse at Scotland's most southern tip, the Mull-of-Galloway. There, the community, as we know, recently voted overwhelmingly to take over the land and buildings and surroundings that their Stevenson-built lighthouse, which is much like many of the others around our shores, including Cape Wrath. Aileen-McLeod has praised the local spirit, Steve and Maureen and the whole team that's developing the attraction of their lighthouse, where views stretch to Ireland, the Isle of Man, as well as Cumbria. I met some of the community leaders at the Mull, and they in turn seek to work with other communities owning lighthouses around Scotland. Recently, Covesea in Moray was bought with help with money from the Land Fund. The people of North Ronaldsay in Orkney also have control of a very old lighthouse there, and they hope also to work with the group which is trying to take over the land around Cape Wrath. For the past 9 months, Durness folk have been campaigning to buy 58 acres of land that surround the most northwesterly lighthouse on the Scottish mainland at Cape Wrath. They applied under the community right to buy when the Northern Lighthouse Board was exposed as seeking to sell the land to the Ministry of Defence. Both of these bodies come under Westminster Reserve powers. Both thought that a cosy arrangement could be made, as the MOD had previously acquired thousands of acres.
Without wishing to be too restrictive, I would remind you of the contents of the motion, Mr Gibson.
Indeed so. I thought you might do that, but but I'm relating this.
Will come as no surprise.
Yes, I have backed the Durness Development Group plans from the start to secure the few remaining acres at the Cape, which is visited by a locally owned bus, which carries 3,000 passengers a year over the 12 miles after a short ferry trip across the Kyle of Durness. The point is that they can learn from the developments at the Mull-of-Galloway. And I believe that it's important to recognise how all these places are linked up. Last autumn, I was delighted that the First Minister, Alex Salmond, launched the new Scottish National Trail, which was designed by Cameron McNeish. It winds from the Scottish borders at Kirk-Yetholm and ends at Cape Wrath via beautiful Sandwood Bay. But the coastal trail from the Mull-of-Galloway can join that and therefore link two of those most important lighthouses in our country in a walking trail which can attract people to cover many of the parts that are the most beautiful. And I'm hopeful that Scottish ministers can meet the Durness expectations soon. Now, the community buyouts such as Covesea and the Mull-of-Galloway inject new local vigour, as we've heard. They add small patches of Scotland to be truly in local hands. And looking ahead to early June, Community Land Scotland's AGM, which has been mentioned already in Skye, will celebrate 500,000 acres of our nation now in community hands. I'm glad that there was an easy transfer from the Northern Lighthouse Board to the people at the Mull-of-Galloway, but Cape Wrath should be next. And the name does not mean anger, though a sail by one UK quango to another would certainly have provoked that feeling. The name refers to the Norse word for a turning point. That's when the Viking ships turned from their westerly course from Norway to a southerly one, down into the Minch and onward to the Mull-of-Galloway and the Isle of Man. Let's wish the Mull-of-Galloway people and the Durness folk all success, because their moves are another turning point for community land ownership in Scotland.
Thank you. Interesting, if tenuous connections. Claudia Beamish, 4 minutes, please, Ozerba.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm very happy to be here this afternoon, although it has been a long afternoon for many of us. This is an important debate, and I'm delighted to lend my support to the Mull-of-Galloway community buyout. And I would like to congratulate Aileen-McLeod on securing this debate and compliment her, if I may, on her inspiring description. Members who are familiar with my views on cooperative working and community engagement will not be surprised to hear that I'm very positive about this project, as well as similar projects throughout Scotland. Of course, the fact that this community project is in the south of Scotland, my own region, is an added bonus. All too often, visitors to Scotland are led to believe that the areas of natural beauty begin north of the Forth and the Clyde. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Mull-of-Galloway has been described to me as Scotland's best-kept secret. I hope that in the coming months and years we will see the secret shared among many more people now that the community buyout is happening. And I would like to take this opportunity to join with other members in congratulating the Trust on securing the grant from the Scottish Land Fund. I'm absolutely delighted this funding has been made available, and it will allow the community buyout project to purchase the Mull-of-Galloway estate from the Northern Lighthouse Board, as well as the securing, as Aileen's already pointed out, the 20 jobs and creating opportunities for others. While there is still a little further to go, I understand that the Trust is confident the group will make up the remaining shortfall. Members who have a connection with the South Scotland region, and Dumfries and Galloway in particular, will, however, be aware that visitor numbers are down on previous years. This may be the result of financial difficulties many people find themselves in, or maybe down to the awful weather we've been experiencing, although not tonight. Whatever the case, we must all do what we can to publicise projects like this and ensure higher visitor numbers to the region. Indeed, Dumfries and Galloway is in need of serious refocus, I would suggest, by Scottish Government. We've already witnessed the closure of the Costume Museum, despite cross-party efforts to prevent it. And as we are aware, tourist attractions and facilities help support each other. So I would ask Scottish Government to do all it can to support the region. While looking at the project, I was struck by how many different aspects have been put together, as highlighted earlier by Aileen. There has, since 2000, been an RSPB visitor centre located near the fantastic viewing point and nature trails. From there you can see the guillemots, as highlighted by Alex Ferguson, puffins, my colleague Claire Baker being the species champion for them, and even in winter, I understand, peregrines. I'm pleased to hear the RSPB has been heavily involved with the Mull and with the Trust, and will soon be an official partner, as I understand it, with the group. But of course the main attraction is the lighthouse itself, and I'm glad that the Trust is being able to take ownership of it and save it from potential ruin. The view on a clear day, I've been told, is quite spectacular, and as highlighted by other members, one can see Northern Ireland is perfectly visible and the Isle of Man. And I look forward to taking up the invitation from the Trust to go and see it for myself, as I also look forward to visiting the Lighthouse exhibition, which has already opened. Now, with the funding being made available through the Scottish Land Fund, I understand that also there will be the possibility of the purchase of the lighthouse keepers' cottages, and that it will be able to be rented out, so I would even have somewhere to stay. I first heard of the Trust community buyout during the evidence session from the Land Reform Review Group earlier this year in Dumfries, and it was then that I was invited to visit the project in the summer. For those not familiar with the group, it has been tasked, I know members here today will be, but for others who might look at this debate with interest further afield, it's been tasked with helping communities to have a say in ownership, management and use of land throughout Scotland, empowering communities to make the best of the natural resources available. At the session, we heard from a range of community buyout models, and I was particularly impressed with the presentation given by the Mull-of-Galloway Trust on that day. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all model which is suitable for every potential project, but I am concerned that in this case, the Trust, if I may say so, has got it spot on. While community buyout projects are always associated with the Highlands, the Mull-of-Galloway project is an ideal example of how this community-based cooperative way of working can be utilised throughout our country. I'm very keen to support this type of capacity building for community buyouts where appropriate, and I wish the Mull-of-Galloway project every success as an inspiration to others, but also in its own right, for those who feel able to and are empowered to take on the making of their own land and facilities and assets work for them and for the future. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now call on Christine Graham to be followed by Joan McAlpine. 4 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I congratulate Aileen-McLeod on securing this debate. And in answer to a Lucas Scant from Alex Ferguson, I'll say, why am I in a debate about the Mull-of-Galloway, representing, as I do, Midlothian and the Borders? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. And there's a couple of reasons. First of all, I was, if I may call myself, a temporary Gallovidian for some 15 years, living and teaching in Whithorn and then Newton Stewart. If I recall, it was called the Machers as opposed to the Rins. My sons are both Gallovidian born, so I have a personal locus. I often wander down that other peninsula, Port William, Kirkmaiden to the Mull, still frequently overlooked, that part of Scotland, by the way, by many Scots. It's an extraordinary part. It's so far south, I understand it's on a level with Durham if you draw a line across the map. And it has its own ecoclimate. I used to yell at the television, grumbling about the weather forecast being way out of kilter with the weather that I saw from my window. And the weather brings me, Presiding Officer, before you wonder if there's a tenuous link, to a dramatic visit to the Mull, one gloomy, wild day. Indeed, from the internet, I note when I looked under history of the Mull, it begins, quotes, gulls, gales and grandeur of cliff and sea is unsurpassed. Just so. The wind in that exposed wild promontory, those were the days before health and safety took serious hold, just about whipped me off my feet. Huge grumbling waves lashed the rocks and sea, and this dark sky in turmoil could not be distinguished, the one from the other. I was about to give up when the wild movements of the sea took a different turn. Great grey lumps of something or other caught my eye. Everyone else had turned to the cars. "I've seen a whale," I shouted. "In fact, I've seen lots of whales." But my words were lost in the wind. "Ach, it's just the sea," came a reply. But then, from the lighthouse, somebody came out. Battling against the wind and bending forward, I just heard them saying, "You have." It was a school of whales, the only one I've ever seen to this day. And that blustery day out of nowhere, a wonderful, wonderful experience and a sight never to be forgotten, and that's why I'm talking about it here today. It surpassed those sunnier days then when the gulls left you no doubt that you were on their territory and you're being told to leave under no uncertain terms. A wonderful place. And I'm delighted it's now being held in the custody and care of the people who deserve to hold it in their custody and care, the people who live there. Now, the other reason I want to speak about is I'm a great advocate, as we all are in here, of people power, of community commitment. In my constituency, I'll tell the people of Gorebridge and Newton Grange, who so recently felt powerless but have been proved wrong, they should look to the success of the South Rhinns Community Development Trust in accessing £338,500, I don't know if there's any pennies, but that was what was there, from that £6 million Scottish Land Fund pot. There is money out there for communities. It's a bit of a labyrinth to negotiate, worse than those stormy Mull seas, but it's well worth negotiating. So I congratulate Aileen-McLeod in this debate, but if you'll forgive me, more importantly, I congratulate the community at Mull for securing the fund.
Many thanks. I now call on Joan McAlpine, after which we will move to the Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I too congratulate my colleague Aileen-McLeod in securing this debate and echo her comments about the hard work and dedication of the South Rhinns Community Development Trust, which has led to the successful award to purchase 30 acres of the Mull-of-Galloway for the community. And I too would like to welcome Maureen and Sammy Chand and Brian Collins to the Scottish Parliament, and I'm sure they take great pleasure in the fact that Ms McLeod's debate has changed from one supporting the bid to one celebrating its success. I would also extend and echo her congratulations to Kathleen and Steve Hardy. And I heard Mr Hardy this morning on Radio Scotland, and I thought he gave a very impressive articulation of the community's vision for the Mull-of-Galloway. There's much to be celebrated about this part of Scotland. It's our Land's End, as other people have mentioned, our unspoiled Land's End. And it's dominated, of course, by the magnificent Stevenston Lighthouse. By way of an aside, for those unable to travel immediately to the Mull-of-Galloway, I can recommend the Lighthouse webcam commissioned by the Northern Lighthouse Board, showing the view from the tower. And if you watch it long enough, you can perhaps spot that school of whales. But I think I would recommend visiting the place, as it's so stunning, as Aileen has outlined. Presiding Officer, Scotland is known for the beauty of its landscape, and today's debate is a great opportunity to remind visitors and Scots themselves that much of this stunning and dramatic landscape is found in the south of the country, as well as the Highlands, which perhaps get a little bit more attention. For that reason, it gives particular pleasure to see that a remote rural community in the far south of Scotland is benefiting from one of the first grants from the Scottish Government-backed Scottish Land Fund. It's just over a year since the Government launched the £6 million Land Fund to give communities the means to take over the land on which they live. Land ownership builds independent, resilient rural communities and creates a great sense of confidence and community empowerment. When the fund was launched last year, the then Environment Minister, Stuart Stevenson, said it was to help more of our rural areas take control of their own destinies and to flourish. I have every confidence that this particular community will maximise the natural advantages and pristine beauty that the Rhinns of Galloway already possesses. The success of community ownership is, of course, closely associated with the success of this Scottish Parliament. And now it's also been verified by academic research. Dr Sarah Skerritt of the Scottish Agricultural College, now the SRUC, visited 17 community land trusts as part of a past project commissioned by this Parliament. And she was very clear in her conclusions, based on the evidence that she had gathered at first hand, mainly in the north and west of the country, that community land ownership leads to more vibrant rural communities. Now that the Mull-of-Galloway is soon to be bought for the benefit of its people, the benefits of community ownership will be felt from Scotland's beautiful southern tip to its northern crofting townships. I think that's something very appropriate and something that we can all be proud of in this Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now call on Minister Paul Wheelhouse. 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, like other members, I'd like to thank Aileen-McLeod for bringing forward this debate today. I know, as a fellow South of Scotland member, that Aileen-McLeod has been involved with the Mull-of-Galloway Trust in its proposals to purchase the Mull-of-Galloway estate from the Northern Lighthouse Board. And as Aileen-McLeod set out, as an independent ballot assessor, I understand she even oversaw the historic count, which demonstrated the community's overwhelming support for the Trust proposals for the purchase through the community right to buy provisions. It must have been a very exciting moment for all involved and a monumental evening for the Trust, the community of Kirkmaiden and all involved. I'd like to congratulate the Mull-of-Galloway Trust and in particular its directors, Donald McComb, Stephen Hardy, Maureen Shand and Kathleen Mary Hardy, together with all those involved, including the community of Kirkmaiden, in this highly significant community buyout. And I wish Steve and Kathleen Hardy well as they fight the scourge of cancer. I was not aware of that, and I certainly wish them very well in that fight, which is obviously something I'm sure we all share, that sentiment. They have my best wishes for sure. And it is a successful community buyout, for today, as members have acknowledged, the Scottish Land Fund has announced that the Mull-of-Galloway Trust has been awarded £388,500 towards the purchase and development of the Lighthouse estate. So I am delighted that the Trust can now complete its purchase and take forward its plans for the development of this locally important asset. As Aileen-McLeod and other speakers have stated, this community buyout has great potential. It will help develop a critically important tourist complex in a remote area of Scotland and will make a significant economic contribution to a remote rural community. I note the 20 jobs that were mentioned, and I think that is hugely significant for an area of that scale. It will help to maintain and increase employment opportunities, to counter the trend of young people leaving the area to find work, and it will increase volunteering opportunities and community involvement, and it will improve community cohesion. I believe that these proposals will make a real and long-lasting difference to this remote South of Scotland community. The proposals are firmly rooted in the community's needs and its aspirations for its development, which bodes very well for its success. Successful projects like this do not just happen. They take dedication and, indeed, commitment, and quantities the Trust have demonstrated in spades. There are a number of themes running through projects such as this, and we have heard about 3 of these during today's debate, I think. One that has been especially important has been the strong community support behind the project. We heard the phenomenal result of the Trust ballot, 63.8% turnout of the 551 eligible voters within the community, of whom, as others have said, Alex Ferguson, Aileen-McLeod and others have said, an overwhelming 98.6% voted in favour of the Trust proposals, and the Trust should be congratulated in achieving these outstanding figures. Strong community support is also a feature of other buyouts, as communities have rallied and stood firmly behind their buyout proposals. Of the 36 other ballots conducted under the community right to buy provisions of the Land Reform Scotland Act 2003, some 26 have had more than 90% of the voters voting in favour of the proposals by community voters. 2 communities, Salem and Bridgecastle, each had 100%, and these really are impressive figures, and I'm sure certainly figures that politicians like ourselves can only envy. What these figures show is the really impressive community support that is being generated in communities which have the opportunity to purchase land and land assets. And it's important to remember that this support is not confined, as others have mentioned, Aileen-McLeod, Joan McAlpine and Alex Ferguson, among others, have mentioned that this is not restricted just to communities in the Highlands and Islands, but throughout Scotland as a whole. Excuse me, this support is fundamental to the success of community buyouts such as this. It secures community buy-in to the community-led proposals, it engages people in their community and its future development and success. Importantly, it provides a strong foundation for a community body or community group to take forward its plans. And a second theme is partnership working. The Trust has established and is using a number of partnerships to acquire the estate and develop its proposals. There are partnerships with other third sector organisations as well as with the public sector. These have already played a significant role in developing practical and workable proposals, and of course will mean that the Trust has access to a wide support network as well. I understand that there are fundamental links between the Trust and the South Rhinds Community Development Trust, which have helped to bring about the evolution and development of the land buyout, and there are plans for the 2 organisations to work together after purchase to develop the plans for the estate. And that is a very positive suggestion. Together they complement one another's roles and experience. One is a company founded in 1999 with extensive experience running the Mull-of-Galloway experience, as has been said already, and has received recognition through the Dumfries and Galloway Life Tourism Award in 2011. The other is a newly incorporated company founded to acquire property at the Mull-of-Galloway and become a community landowner. This partnership is an excellent example of local organisations working together and sharing their experience for the greater benefit of their communities, and to ensure the assets acquired will be an integral part of the wider economic development landscape, and it is one that other communities should look at. A third theme is the use of professional advice and support. The Trust has drawn on advice from a range of professional advisers, including Dumfries and Galloway Social Enterprise Network, Dumfries and Galloway Council and the highly regarded Destination Dumfries and Galloway. Its development proposals, together with its business plan, clearly show the difference that such advice can have in developing practical, realistic and workable proposals. I'd urge other communities to look at how they can also utilise advice from professional advisers and draw on their knowledge. And I also wanted to mention funding. As I've said earlier, how pleased I am that the Trust has been awarded the funding from the Scottish Land Fund to help realise this project. The Land Fund delivered by Big Lottery and Highlands Isles Enterprise for the Scottish Government is about ensuring that rural communities across the whole of Scotland can achieve increased sustainable economic, social and environmental development through the experience of acquiring, owning and managing land and land assets. So I would encourage other rural communities throughout Scotland that are interested in acquiring land and land assets to consider using this fund. There are now many examples of how the fund has been applied, from purchase of local shops or land adjacent to village halls to larger scale land buyouts and, of course, the occasional lighthouse too. The people of Kirkmaiden have a lot to look forward to. And I just want to pick up, while I have time, just a couple of the points that were raised by members. I was particularly interested in the foghorn approach. I think in terms of the equivalent of the 1 o'clock gun, I'd certainly like to see that. Alex Ferguson's bucket list, I think I will add the destinations of bucket list, and indeed I would be more than happy to accept an invitation from Aileen-McLeod to visit the facility for himself to see how the community are getting on with the project. And Aileen-McLeod and Joan McAlpine raised the importance of communities outside the Highlands Islands. I think, to be fair, everyone has echoed that sentiment, and I certainly want that message to go out loud and clear from here, not just the south of Scotland, other parts of Scotland too, that they should benefit from the fund. And I echo the sentiments about Sarah Skerritt's work, which I think is particularly useful. Joan McAlpine mentioned her, as did others. It's a very important body of work. Community land ownership will make a real difference to this particular community, as it is already doing in communities throughout Scotland. I've said before that it's one of rural Scotland's success stories, but we want to do and achieve more. And I want to reiterate that point today. I'm sure that in the future, it, as well as wider land reform, will be a main driver for investment, regeneration and economic sustainability for all Scotland. And this Government is determined to empower communities throughout Scotland to grasp the opportunity to take control of their own destiny. And I commend Aileen-McLeod for bringing this forward today, and more importantly, I think, as members have echoed, I commend the Mull-of-Galloway Trust for their hard work, and it's nice to see it pay off. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I now close this meeting of Parliament.